everybody, welcome to the channel. This is our tour with our homeschool stuff.
Here's your story, let's begin. The water's fine, come on, dive in. The future's here, it's right before your eyes.
Hey everyone, Jackie, Arcadia, and Elsa here with Enjoying Life's Journey. Welcome back to the channel. The new school season here, we thought it would be a fun idea to do a kind of a tour of our curriculums. Arcadia is officially starting first grade. I have shown some of these curriculums individually on the channel, so I'll leave the playlist in the description box. Today I just want to go over everything as a whole, and then I have a few other things that we've picked up that I will be making individual videos about as well. So then the playlist will be basically, you'll be able to look at each individual subject if you want later. So again, we're going to show our first grade things, and then if you're interested, I can show you some of the things that we had used in the past for preschool that Elsa will be using here probably in about a year or so. All right, so everything here is primarily from simplycharlottemason.com. I have a link to her website because they have a lot of other things that you can use. These are just the ones that I've picked up. Anything else that I have, like our literature books or our books that are in addition for science, or our books that are in addition for history, things like that, I have basically purchased online through Amazon, or we've actually gotten, Arcadia's gotten them as gifts. So if you have any relatives that like to give your kids gifts, give them the list of that literature, those books that you want for the year, and have them give them those instead, which is what we did. The other thing is there are still some books that we don't have for the year as far as reading, so we will probably try to locate at our local library. But anyway, so we're gonna jump on in.
Yep.
Here is our stack of school stuff. It looks like a lot of stuff. Now, if you watch the channel, I am a minimalist. However, I do not go minimal, I guess you could say, with my kids' education. So here we go. These are a combination of lesson plans. So we have 3 different types of lesson plan booklets here. So I'll go over those in a second with you. And then the actual curriculum. We have different curriculum for each subject, as well as added resources or added books to read that go along with it. You know, we follow a Charlotte Mason homeschooling, but we do kind of an unschooling approach to it. So even though we have lesson plans, we do not necessarily follow them exactly, and I'll go over that in a moment. So I just wanted to jump in here. So the first, these are lesson plans. These are individual studies, and this is basically, you know, your lesson plan for grade 1. This lesson plan for grade 1 can actually be used for grade 1 and grade 2 if you start at the very beginning level of it, which they call for the reading a track A level. So we'll be using the same lesson plans 2 years in a row, which will be good. So within here, you have your language, arts, math, and science. So we have here our language arts, basically our reading. So I can show you here. We have our curriculum is the delightful reading. So it comes with your delightful, the reader that comes along with it, and it has your lessons for reading, and then it comes with all of your letter tiles and everything there. I actually encourage you, if you want to pick this up, pick it up before they're in first grade, because it goes over pre-reading for babies, toddlers, and preschoolers. So it's definitely a good thing to have. You have your letter tiles. And then it has the word book, so you know your kids, as they start learning their words, they'll start writing them in there. After about halfway through the year, they will start then to have their own readers that they'll be reading. So these are the 3 readers that Arcadia has for this year. Moving next to that is our delightful handwriting. So we have our teacher's handwriting. You can pick between 2 different styles. I just have the Xanner one, not sure if that's exactly how you say it. And again, these are lesson plans specific for the handwriting. And then it has your handwriting book. And this is the one that kids will write in. The other thing that we use though for this is you can use a dry erase board to start with, and we actually use the dry erase board for handwriting and for math. For our math category, I am using the Living Math. It's a guided journey. The video is really good to have because they show you how to conduct some of the lessons in the book, and this can actually last you up through high school. You will need to buy additional add-ons to this as you move forward, but this overall, this instrument for living teaching gives you those lessons up through high school level type thing. So this is a good, this is for our math. And then we have our manipulative, so we have popsicle sticks, buttons, numbers, and then we have Arcadia's math notebook. So this is, again, this is where she is learning her math. We're actually at place values right now, so that's where she's at. That's math. And then the last one over here is our science. So this year for science, we are doing outdoor secrets. So this companion is the actual lesson plans. These are stories. And then you have, in addition, you have your kids' nature notebook. So we just have one of these handwriting sketchbooks. So it's like their nature notebook. You can work on. We have this journaling a year in nature. They recommend that each person has their own. We're using one just as a family. And then these are all of the added books to read that go along with the topics in the outdoor secrets. So that's our science. So if you want to see more, I have gone over briefly the outdoor secrets in a separate video. I've gone over math in a separate video. I've gone over handwriting and reading in separate videos. So again, I'll leave the playlist down there. So our second area are our enrichment studies. And this is a lesson plan outline book. You basically use it for the whole school. So you would just be changing out some of these things here, and I'll show you that in a moment. I'm going to go over these lesson plans totally separate in another video because I have not done that yet. But starting off here, these are basically your art, music, literature, and more. So here we have our art. So we have different kinds of art. Here we have our handicrafts made simple. We went ahead and picked cardboard and paper. Within the math, they actually talk about learning paper sloyd as a good way to get introduced to geometry. So we went ahead and picked cardboard, paper, and paper. So there's, several activities we're going to be doing in here. So we need to start collecting our supplies to do this. And then within art, we have here our picture studies. So we have 4 artists for the year. And then they have, within here, they have lesson plans, biography, and, the actual photos of the paintings, which is really cool. So our the second area over here is our music studies. So we have 3 composers for the year. And within here, again, they give you the actual music, and then they give you a small pamphlet here, which is, again, some lesson and discussion ideas to do. Our third category here is our literature. So these are our literature picks for the year. I believe we got most of them on the list except for maybe one, which is Pinocchio. And so basically what we do, if your child, they're not reading yet. So we read these aloud. We read the science books. We, as a parent, we read those aloud to our children, and then they give us a oral narration back. So in their own words, they tell us what happened, and that way we know they've understood what was read. And then the last area over here is the poetry area. So we have 1 poet for the year, and then we have just some poetry books here. So each year we'll be picking a different poet. We'll be trying to pick, a few different musicians and a few different artists. So we'll see if we get through all of this year. If not, that is okay. The last area within this is our habit training. So we have laying down the rails, the DVD. I actually have both sets. This is the for children, and then this is the original one. So laying down the rails, this is the original one. It talks about all of the habits, and it gives you just a brief understanding of what the habit is and ways that you can implement it, whereas these provide you actual lessons to work on each habit as a 6-week habit training. So I do think that they go hand in hand, but you can get by with just one or the other. And again, I have a separate video on that as well. So our last section, so we had our individual studies, our enrichment studies, and now we have our history and geography, if you will. So there are, I believe, 6 different time frames that Simply Charlotte Mason offers. She recommends that you go through each of them twice, which would give you your 12 years of schooling. She recommends going in chronological order at the very beginning. I actually started closer to our modern times, which is basically times that are closer to now, more relevant to now. And we're going to work our way backwards. For the first pass through all these, we're going to work our way backward, and then we'll work our way forward. So again, it's going to be your own thing. So this gives you lesson plans for history, geography, and Bible. And again, this is through 1 through 12. So you can use this the whole time. You'll just be switching out different things. So for us, we do not do Bible, so you're going to see what we use here. So here you have this book of centuries. So you use your book of centuries in history, in literature, in art, all of that. Because if you come across an artist or an author or a musician or someone that you want to take note of, you put it in your book of centuries. And then here we have so this is our spiritual laws for parents, Deepak Chopra. He gives you 7 spiritual laws. Basically, you have one spiritual law that you focus on each day. And within those laws, you have a few activities to do. So that's more or less our Bible study, if you will, or our spiritual practice is that right now. And then for our history, this actually gives you lesson plans for American history and world history. For first grade, we're only going to focus on American history. So I have the book that goes along with that. This is Stories of America, Volume 2. And then I have the Visits for North America, which is what I decided to pick as our geography. And again, so these are stories in here, and this goes hand in hand with these lessons, and this has its own set of lessons within here. And within that, we actually end up using some of these other resources over here. So we just have a basic, wall map. Within history, we also have other readings that we might have to do, like Abraham Lincoln and Thomas Edison. For the Visits to North America, we also they have us use this Hungry Planet, What the World Eats, which I think is really a really cool and interesting book just to have in general. And then we also have Material World, and again, it's shows you how basically what everyone in the world eats and what they own and things like that. So it kind of goes along with our geography lesson. So that's all of our stuff. Like I mentioned, we still need to get some art supplies, and we may need to pick up a few more books for history or something like that. But for the most part, that's all of our homeschool stuff for this year. First grade, and Arcadia wanted to tell us something about her math.
And mostly this one, some of these, they're read alouds. What we do is when she reads some parts, some chapters, and then I have to say what stuff happened. And mostly what I do sometimes, I just get a piece of paper and I draw what they're doing, so that's why I remember.
Oh yeah, I forgot about all that. That's good.
Yeah. And this is your math. Mostly these I need to find, mostly we get numbers and then we have to start finding what are the numbers supposed to look for. And like if you take away, if you have like 9 and we take away 1, it'll be like 8. And that's what we do from this, all this.
Very good. Which one do you like so far the most? Math? Yeah, you're pretty good at math. All right, so what she was saying with the read aloud, and this is actually a good tip for you guys. If you're finding that you're trying to read something to your children and they're too distracted, they're too antsy, what we started doing with Arcadia is while I'm reading, she actually draws on a piece of paper. She actually draws what she hears, and then she can tell me the story in her own words. And we found out that it's actually really cool because she gets to do art, she gets to draw at the same time, and she listens better because she knows she's going to draw what she did, and she said she's 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we follow the Charlotte Mason method of homeschooling, which is basically incorporating all of the areas of the academics as well as life skills, what they call handicrafts, so making art that will be useful, learning life skills like cooking and all of that, and habit training and things like that, but also doing it where instead of learning from textbooks, you do a lot of your learning from literature, with the exception of some science experiments and math. But for the most part, you learn through life stories, so it's more interesting, and you do the oral narration when they're younger, and then you progress into written narration and stuff as they get older. I believe when they're 10 or so. So that's our first grade curriculum. Like I mentioned, I have the majority of these individual videos going over them in the playlist, so I'll leave the playlist below. I do want to go over, I'm going to make a separate video on the lesson plans that I have. So like I mentioned, these are more like the curriculum, the actual curriculum with the lessons within each subject, but then I have lesson plans to help me tie all of this into one seamless year. And when I do that video, I'm going to also talk to you guys about how we're scheduling out our year and our weeks and things like that. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. As always, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching for our homeschool stuff. Thanks for watching. Bye.
With the
Welcome to your life's journey. And my mama.
Mama's channel.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.